Remember those choose your own adventure books that you read as a kid? Well, they inspired my favorite ad strategy for promoting free content like blog posts or podcast episodes for cheap. I'm Claire Pelletreau, Instagram and Facebook ads expert. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I use carousel ads to get a ton of new and cheap listeners over to my podcast, and how you can set this up to promote blog posts, podcast episodes, any kind of opt-in content. If you are a content creator, then you're going to want to get this campaign up and running ASAP. Let's take a look at one of the campaigns that I have run for my podcast. As you can see, this brought in almost 3,000 new visitors over to the podcast pages related to the episodes I was promoting, and I spent a little bit over $1,300. This campaign actually broke even, so I made money from these ads because of the way people bought from the podcast ads on the episodes, which send people into a funnel. I actually go into detail about how that works in one of the episodes of the podcast, which I will link in the description of this video. But for now, let's take a look at the ads. Let's just look at one ad set, probably my best performing. And as you can see, there are two ads. I've labeled them white and peach, and this really just describes the color of the overlay that I did. So I tested this on purpose to see, which color would actually get the most clicks. Would it be a clean white overlay or this peach color? And it turns out Facebook did spend most of my money here in the peach ad, which is totally normal, but the cost per click or the cost per landing page view was significantly cheaper. So let's take a look at this ad. Now, I ran this ad in all placements, but Facebook happened to show it the most on Instagram in the feed and Instagram stories. So basically, as you can see, each carousel card, that's what these are called. You might recognize them a little bit more if we look at it on desktop. So each one of these on desktop has it has this little caption below the photo. But what I've done is I've set these up, each one going to a different page on my site because it promotes a different podcast episode. The first one was with Jerisha Hawk, and then Tarzan K, Brooke Castillo, Tony Rulli, Steph Crowder, Shantae Cofield, and an episode that I did just myself talking about my best year to date. So these literally just have a different image and a different link. So let's take a look at it on Instagram because you can see a lot. You actually see less text. Instagram feed. Okay. So again, people could just scroll through, and each button said learn more. At the time that I ran these, you couldn't use the call to action that you can use now, which is actually listen more. So if you're promoting podcast episodes, I highly recommend you use listen more. And then people would just click through on the one that most interested them. So how do you actually see which link is getting the most clicks? Well, whenever you use a carousel ad in a campaign, you have to dig a little to find the data. So let's just filter by selection here. So we're only looking at the one ad. And then you're going to go into the breakdown button. And then underneath buy action, which it might show up like this for you, you click down on buy action and then hit carousel card. So something that's odd about the carousel card data is that it doesn't populate except for link clicks. And that's okay. That's the one I'm most interested in. So now you can see what happens if I sort. It doesn't really sort. You can see one of these episodes got 905 link clicks out of 1,600. So that was by far the winner. Which one was that? Well, I remember that this is carousel card 1, and I know that the first one I created was Jerisha Hawk's episode. So that creative, or maybe the person, depending on who it was being shown to, if they knew Jerisha and were interested in her story, that was the most interesting one. I'm not surprised at all because the text on that image said 60K month from a side hustle. Very, very appealing, right? So then the second most popular one was number 7, which was my own episode. The next most popular one was Shantae Cofield. So this is really interesting. I mean, I don't care which episode people are listening to because typically for a podcast, people who start listening will often listen to more episodes. So it doesn't matter which one they start with for me. And then I was able to see the data that eventually people were purchasing through those funnels, again, that I talk about in that podcast episode. So this is how I have used carousel ads just by linking in each carousel card to a different episode. Now, some people have asked me, do you send people to iTunes? Do you send people to Spotify? Do you send people to your site? Now, I send people to my site because then I can easily retarget them. I also know how many people are actually letting the page load because you can see that we had over 1,600 link clicks, but only 1,480 landing page views. That's pretty common. But if you only send people to iTunes or Spotify, where you cannot track landing page views because you cannot put your pixel on those pages, then you really don't know. You don't know what people are doing. You also cannot track downloads from a particular podcast episode that come from ads. You simply can't do it. But what you can do if you have opt-ins, like advertisements for a free guide or a webinar or something like I do on my podcast, I can see how many people opt in from my ads and what the cost per opt-in is. But basically, these ads are paying for themselves because of the funnel that I have placed, and I'm growing my listenership by leaps and bounds without having to post on social a gazillion times a day. In fact, I barely mention my podcast on social. So that's one example of the choose your own adventure strategy to promote free content. You can do the exact same thing, but instead of podcast episodes, maybe you would switch out the links to different blog posts of yours. Or if you have multiple opt-ins, you can most certainly have something that says, oh, do you need help with growing your Instagram following? Here are some free resources I have. And then each carousel card is just a link and an image to, one of your PDFs, masterclasses, a free challenge, something like that. I highly recommend you use this strategy for free ungated content. So something that people don't need to put their email address in. It just kind of creates more goodwill from people. So I use it all the time for both podcast episodes and blog posts, especially if I am leading up to a launch and I want to increase my site traffic and then retarget those people once the cart is open. Cool. If you have any questions at all, just leave a comment below this video. I will do my absolute best to get back to you or to create more videos along the way that do answer your questions. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as soon as more strategies, tutorials, tips and tricks, all that jazz get published. Cool. Thanks so much for watching.